You know what time it is. Wait, what? You still don't know what time it is? Alright. Okay, so now you know what time it is. For those of you who don't know, and for those of you who don't recognize that song, that is Hail to the Victors, and that is the fight song for my alma mater, or should I say one of my alma maters, the University of Michigan. Go Blue. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar. I'm not going to give my typical intro. That is under construction right now, and I'm working on revising it. But please like the channel. Please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. And if you're a Michigan fan or a college football fan, please share the video. And even though the college football season has started, this is the eve of the University of Michigan football team's home opener against Middle Tennessee. So that's tomorrow. I think it's 7 or 7:30. It's an evening kickoff up in Ann Arbor. So let's see. So on my blog, I've written about sports before. You know, my usual areas are science and education and money and those kinds of things. But you know, sports is a part of education, and you can learn a lot from sports. And so I've written about it, and I've actually written about Michigan football over the last couple of years. Usually at the end of our seasons, which I will discuss later on in this video. But you know, I am a diehard Michigan fan. I'm an alumnus, and I just want to say that in one of my earlier videos talking about you know, my father or most of my uncles not being around, I did say that I got a late start watching football and even understanding football and also learning football. And you know, I'm from Buffalo, New York, so my hometown team is the Buffalo Bills. And so let's see, I didn't start learning football until my best friend got Tech Mobile on his Nintendo, so I started learning that way. But in my early teens, the Buffalo Bills got really good. And each of my 4 years in high school, we went to the Super Bowl. So I'm kind of dating myself there. But when I look back at those years, you know, I do recall that each of those 4 years we went to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, we lost all four. But I started learning about the game by watching the Buffalo Bills' success during those years. I didn't really keep up with the University of Michigan's football team and program in those years. I do remember, you know, kind of at a distance seeing the winged helmets on television. I was mostly into basketball in those years, so my most vivid memories of Michigan sports during that time was of the Fab Five: Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, Juwan Howard, Jimmy King, and Ray Jackson, and of course their supporting cast, and Coach Steve Fisher. So that was my most vivid memories of Michigan sports at that time. When I was an undergraduate, the football team went undefeated and won the Rose Bowl and won a share of the national title with the University of Nebraska, which is a point of contention all of these years later. That was prior to the BCS when coaches voted the champion. And then once I got to the university for graduate school, that was on the tail end of Coach Lloyd Carr's tenure, who actually coached them to that national title. So my first year, also interestingly, my first year of graduate school was Tom Brady's last year as the quarterback at the University of Michigan. And even back then, I could tell that there was something special about him. He was very poised, he was very talented, and he was very competitive. And during that stretch, I was at the university from 1999 to 2005, 2006. I saw a lot of players come through. David Terrell, Anthony Thomas, the A-Train. Let's see, who else? Dave Boss, Ernest Shazor, Victor Hobson, Mike Hart, Chad Henne, Mario Manningham, Adrian Arrington, Braylon Edwards, all those, Marlon Jackson, all those guys came through. And the program during those years, it was just competitive enough, but not competitive to make it into the BCS, the top 2 BCS rankings each of those years. So that's something that contributed to Coach Lloyd Carr getting run out of town. But what also contributed to it was his losses to Ohio. And when I say Ohio, I mean Ohio State, but I'm going to refer to them as Ohio in this video, just for shits and giggles. So Coach Carr, my first 2 years in graduate school, we beat Ohio. And that's what led to Ohio firing John Cooper, because John Cooper couldn't beat Lloyd Carr in Michigan. And they then turned around and hired Jim Tressel. And so it completely flipped. So now Coach Carr couldn't beat Jim Tressel and couldn't beat Ohio. I think he beat them in his last 5 years as our head coach. He beat Ohio once. And the rest of the time he got owned by Jim Tressel. And I liked Lloyd Carr. But the next head coach, Rich Rodriguez, brought in his spread offense, and he couldn't beat them. Though he brought the program up in his last and fourth year before he got ran out of town. And then Brady Hoke came back into the program because he was one of our assistant coaches under Lloyd Carr. He was able to beat Ohio his first year with Denard Robinson at quarterback, and then he lost to them his last 3 years when Urban Meyer took over their program. And that's when the stars aligned, and we here it is. That's when the stars aligned, and Coach Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, who played quarterback at the University of Michigan and who was one of our most storied quarterbacks, just happened to arrive at the end of his tenure with the San Francisco 49ers. And around that time, Brady Hoke got fired. We were able to hire Coach Harbaugh into the program. And so the prodigal son came home, and we had a big name coach, and it seemed that that 8-year dark period after Lloyd Carr got fired was over because we had Coach Harbaugh back. So that's where we are now. We are 5 years into Coach Harbaugh's tenure, and it's been good to have him back, but something has happened that none of us would have ever expected, and that's that Coach Harbaugh has not beaten Ohio in any of his 4 years up to this point. Let's see. So I'm just going to recap the last 4 games against Ohio and just kind of talk about, what happened and why we haven't beaten Ohio the last 4 years. But I'm going to play their obnoxious fight song really quickly, just because it's dominated the games the last 4 years, and just I'm going to play this really quickly. Actually, Buckeye fan, your fight song is kind of cool. I'm just tired of hearing it. I'm tired of losing to you guys every year. So hopefully this year will be different. So we've had a bit of a ritual. The game is usually on Thanksgiving weekend, and so I've been up in Buffalo watching the game at Buffalo Wild Wings on Niagara Falls Boulevard in Buffalo. Those of you from Western New York know where that is. And so there have been about 5 of us getting together to watch the game. 2 of us are Michigan fans. My brother puts on his Michigan shirt to support us. And then we have 2 other friends who are Ohio State fans. Well, one is an Ohio State fan, and the other one, I think, just roots for them just to spite us. And the last couple of years have just been painful. I mean, just very, very, just painful. So the 2015 game, I think I was actually in Atlanta for that one. Ohio State, that was loaded that year. That was Jim's first year taking over the program. So he still had a bunch of Brady Hoax players. Many of them were quality. He had a redshirt graduate transfer at quarterback in Jake Rudock. And Ohio was loaded that year. They brought in, J.T. Barrett was playing quarterback, Ezekiel Elliott was playing running back, and they just destroyed us that game. So it wasn't much of a game. The next year, though, Coach Harbaugh took a very talented squad down to the Snake Pit, which is what we call the Horseshoe. And maybe someday I'll get to go down to the Snake Pit and see a game myself. But we had arguably the more talented squad. Wilton Spade at quarterback. We had a veteran receiving core, J.U. Chesson, Amar Darboh, Jake Butt. And that game, even though we arguably had the more talented squad, Wilton Spade was hurt. I didn't even think he was going to play. He got hurt against Iowa, broke his collarbone. And he threw a couple of picks. He played a good game, though he did throw a couple of picks. And then, Coach Harbaugh had a meltdown on the sidelines, which the refs penalized the team for. There were a lot of questionable calls in that game, and none more controversial than the favorable spot that JT Barrett got at the end of the game. So, and that's what actually put them in position for Curtis Samuel's score that won the game. But we had a good pass rush that year with Chris Wormley and Ryan Glasgow, and we had a good pass rush. But it seemed like Ohio State was getting away with a lot of holding in that game. And we lost a heartbreaker. That game was a heartbreaker. The next year, the game was back at our house. We had a lot of instability at quarterback that year. And we wound up with John O'Corn, another transfer, at the helm against the Buckeyes. And we were actually in position to beat Ohio at the end of that game. And all John O'Corn had to do was just drive us down the field for a score. And he was playing a decent game that day. And I don't know what he was looking at, but he hoisted the ball up on that drive, and there were no Michigan receivers around to catch the ball, just Ohio State defensive backs. And so we lost that game on a interception. Last year, we once again arguably Coach Harbaugh took a better team down to the snake pit. And if there was any year to beat Ohio, that was the year. But it turned out to be another heartbreaker. And it started off that way. And it was a heartbreaker for a number of reasons. But the main one for me was that it seemed like the team was unprepared to play that game from a mental standpoint, and I think that we also got outcoached on both sides of the ball. On defense, Coach Brown, also known as Dr. Defense, played his Viper scheme, which is a blitz basically on every down where you leave your defensive backs on islands against the other team's wide receivers. And so the assumption there with that defense is that you're going to get to the quarterback and create pressure, kind of like Buddy Ryan's 46 defense with the Chicago Bears and then the Houston Oilers and the Philadelphia Eagles. But if you have an accurate quarterback who can get the ball out quickly using short routes, you can beat that defense, and that's what Dwayne Haskins did play after play after play last year. And our pass rush didn't get to him. I'm not sure that we sacked him once. And he was able to get that ball out quickly to his fast receivers who in Ohio State just ran wheel routes and routes out of the backfield and all kinds of out patterns. And they just, our defensive backs got shredded. And on play after play after play, our defense, which had been dominant most of the year, just got shredded. And eventually, I think their will got broken. And at one stretch during the second half, our guys just started getting injured, and it was bad. Turned into a real shit show. On offense, I don't think that we properly utilized all of our weapons. We had three stud wide receivers. We had Donovan Peoples-Jones, we had Nico Collins, and we had Tariq Black back, who was a real burner down the field. He had a lot of speed. And we also had Zach Gentry, who was a 6'8" tight end. I think he dropped a touchdown pass in the end zone, but I thought that we could have challenged Ohio down the field a lot more than we did. And so miraculously, the game was tied at halftime, and so we were right in it at halftime, but the adjustments weren't made, and it just got away from the maize and blue in the second half. So in my opinion, a really good coach in any sport can foresee and plan for what's going to happen or what may happen, and that coach can adjust to what's happening during the game. So one of the things that I was disappointed with Coach Don Brown. Now, mind you, he's a professional. He's down on the sidelines. I'm not. He gets paid for this. I don't. But I thought that he could have adjusted for what Ohio State was doing, or he could have planned for what Ohio State was going to do. I think a really good example, or a real textbook example of a coach making adjustments, is going back to Super Bowl 25, where the 1990-91 New York Giants were able to slow down my Buffalo Bills just enough to win the game. Coach Bill Belichick, who's now the legendary coach of the New England Patriots, went with 2 down linemen and flooded the rest of the field with defensive backs, which slowed down our K-gun / no-huddle offense. And I thought that that's a perfect example of scheming and adjusting your defense to what the other team is either going to do or what you think they might do. So I thought that was a big missed opportunity. I saw some footage on YouTube where Coach Brown said that he's put in some zone schemes. So let's see. And on offense, Coach Harbaugh brought in Josh Gaddis, who supposedly is going to open up the offense. So in terms of how this season is going to unfold, the Detroit Free Press wrote an article basically predicting our wins and losses. And their prediction is that it's going to be a 9 to 10 win season, but they're predicting us losing to Notre Dame at home, and they are predicting us losing to Ohio at home. We have Iowa coming in, which they play a tough brand of football, a physical brand of football. We've got Sparty, or should I say Cal U, coming in, which should be a winnable game, but then again, you never know, especially with football, you never know how the injuries are going to play out. So you never know what your roster is going to look like late into the season. So regardless of how the other 11 games go, I only have my eye on one game, and that's our game against Ohio, which the Free Presses predicted us to lose. And I'll even say I don't even care if we make the playoff this year, but I want us to beat Ohio. We've got to beat Ohio. And there's a lot riding on that game. Coach Harbaugh hasn't beaten them yet. Urban Meyer left, so there's a first-year coach in there now in Ryan Day. And that's not to say that Ryan Day can't coach, but it will be extra sour if Coach Harbaugh loses to Ohio again, this time with the first-year coach. And apparently they're still pretty loaded, and they have another talented quarterback in there. So that's not going to be a gimme, even though it's at home. But, there's a lot riding on that, especially since, college coaches only have a window of losing before the fan base starts calling for their head. Doesn't matter who the coach is. Most coaches have a window before the fan base gets restless. So it's a pretty big game this year. It's pretty much a must-win for Coach Harbaugh and for the program. So I'm going to. That's my take on it. I don't care about anything else. I just want to beat Ohio. So I'm going to close that there. I think it'll be a good season. I think we'll have a competitive team once again, but it's all going to come down to the ending. Will we beat Ohio? Will we make it into the playoff? And if we don't make it into the playoff, will we lose our bowl game again? Because it seems like there's something about that loss to Ohio that even poisons the bowl game. We've had a bad showing in our bowl games since beating Florida, Coach Harbaugh's first year. So that's what I have to say about the season. I hope that it's a good season. Those are my comments and predictions. Please feel free to leave your comments and predictions in the comments section below. I'm going to leave that article that the Free Press wrote about how the team is supposed to do in the description box below. In addition to the blog posts I've written, over the years about our losses to Ohio State and the season, and I'm going to revise my ending for this video, and I'm going to close with "Hail to the victors," and also "Go Blue, beat Ohio." And I'm going to take us out with this. Oh, by the way, Ohio, where does that come from? I don't think I said that in the video. Brady Hoke actually said that at his opening press conference when he took over the team back in 2011 or 2012, whenever that was, and he called them Ohio. So I intentionally referred to Ohio State as Ohio in this video just to gouge the Buckeye fans a little bit. So that's where that came from. That's why I was saying it. And you know what? Let's hear that one more time.